Well, hey everybody, welcome back to TrainWorldTV and the continuation of our series, How to Build a Layout. Today's step is a much needed step, but pretty simple to do, so let's get started with how to ballast track next. So let's begin with what I think is a realistic looking mixture of ballast. And what I usually do is Woodland Scenics medium ballast for HO scale. In scale you're probably going to use fine ballast. Some HO scalers will use fine ballast as well, but I go ahead and use medium ballast. And I use a gray blend. There are two different shades of gray in this ballast. So I take a gray blend and I open up the Woodland Scenics lid here and I find a container. Now this is a coffee creamer container that I really like because of the spout. If you look at the spout here, you got nice directional flow. Another thing I really enjoy using for ballasting is a plastic cup I can really squeeze and get an angle on. But for now we're going to use this. So now I've used gray and filled this about 5/6 of the way up. And now I'm going to pour the black cinders in here. These are also medium ballast. And they are just called medium cinders from Woodland Scenics. And now I'm going to mix these up and shake this until we have a nice mixture. Now you're free to use the Woodland Scenics container too because it has a spout, but because I'm using this container, every once in a while I'm shaking it and checking the consistency in the Woodland Scenics clear container so I can see what's going on, and it helps to free some space up inside. And then I go back to shaking it again and I continue to check consistency, and now we're looking a little better with consistency of the cinders and the gray ballast. Now when you have the consistency, as you can see towards the middle area, you've now got 3 different colors in your ballast, and it looks really nice. I've had a lot of questions and compliments about it. But not only does it represent some of the different rock colors of the ballast, but it represents if oil stains from the diesel locomotive spilling oil on the ballast. It helps bring that realism out by having a few different colors in your ballast. And you can see that clear line where this was the old type of ballast with just medium gray, and this is how it's mixed in with cinders. Now we're looking at a switch here for a very particular reason. A switch operates mainly on these points here, and these points can be adjusted. Right now this is locked down with just a small nail to hold this in place, but if that point is thrown this way, you're going to be able to district that off and run off into the yard. If it's thrown this way towards the camera, that's going to be able to run straight. But the important thing is that switch has to be able to move back and forth freely. These little pieces of rock from the ballast love to get in to those switch points and cause havoc. Just one piece of ballast can keep it just enough from being aligned to derail your train. So what I do, as you can see, is I've painted the cork roadbed that you can see on the back line gray, so that when I have ballast around the area, I don't have to have it on those points, and it still looks pretty decent because it's all gray. If you really want to get fancy, you can put it in some areas around there, but you really want to be careful of those points. Further up the switch, you also want to be careful throughout this area as well. The frogs, if you get ballast in these recessed areas here, you can also create derailments as you lift up the wheel just enough that it's off of the track and not on alignment and derailed. So that's why this whole area is painted gray, so you don't have to get ballast mixed into that area. Now one thing that you want to do before putting your ballast down is make sure that the area is ready. You want the scenery pretty much done around the track, and we're not at that point because we have still some supplies that are tied up with supply chain issues. So I'm going to do a dry run of what you do to put the ballast down and then I'll show you how you lock it in place, although I won't actually do it. I'm going to show you how this is done, including any areas you see like this where ballast could work its way down because of a gap. You may want to consider painting gray like your switches. It will help in case that ballast works its way out. But what you're going to do is simply take whatever spout you've decided to create from a cup or a coffee filter such as this, and you're going to start working the ballast out along the edge of this profile here. You're also going to do that on the other side, and don't worry if there's too much. You just want to get some ballast out there because we're going to spread this out later and repair any amount of ballast that doesn't look right. So I'm just going to do that short little area there and get all of that ballast out and on the track. Now that looks like a bit of a hot mess, but I'll show you how we can make this look a lot better. Now this is a 1-inch paintbrush, so you're just going to go along the center ties here, working the ballast into all of the areas here. And you want a nice even application of the ballast in between all of the wooden ties or the concrete ties you see. Then you're going to brush across the top here and get it wedged into all of the areas on the outside of the rail. Then you can just brush it off simply. Now ballasting, if you want it to look right, is going to take some time to really detail this area, because if you want it to look evenly applied, if you want it to be running across all of the ties evenly without huge gaps or cork showing through, you're going to want to take your time with your 1-inch paintbrush to do so. Then you're going to push it up on the side here where it's worked its way off and kind of go back at it to work on that rail profile there. Now one thing, if you really want to get particular, is that you don't have a lot of ballast just sitting on top of the wood ties. You know, you want to work it back and forth. If you put too much ballast down, well, just take a vacuum like a shop vac I have here, and you can suck up a little bit of excess ballast. You can even straighten out the lines along the side or brush it away with your 1-inch paintbrush. Now this side that you're working on is going to be much easier to handle than the other side. It's going to be a little more difficult to get that other side packed in. Now if you're between two rails, it's actually easy in a lot of cases, but you're just going to want to get that worked into the track here. Now one thing I will tell you, which is kind of a neat effect that's not necessarily intentional, but it's great with Woodland Scenics products, is as you can see, I've lightened the wooden ties there and in a way kind of weathered them a little bit. Now you can pre-weather your wooden ties or even after the fact with a airbrush, but we don't go into that quite amount of detail here on the channel. This is more geared towards beginning to model and create your own layout after a layout with track bed that's built in or something to that nature. As you can see, we have a nice area of ballasted track now. And again, along the edges here, you can go along with a vacuum and make a razor straight edge by just barely sucking off some of the ballast from the edge, or you can leave it uneven, which is what it looks like in real life. But we're not done here, so let's move on to how to make this ballast really stay. The first step in making ballast stay is taking a water bottle with a mist feature. I will try to show you this up against the light because it's going to be very hard to see, but when I fire this bottle, you get mist. And the reason you want mist is because anything with a very concentrated stream is going to displace your ballast. And you've worked so hard to get that worked into all the ties and all the areas with a straight edge, and now you don't want to worry about having that misplaced. So in this mist bottle is probably 99% water, but just one little capful of 70% isopropyl alcohol. And you're going to want to spray that across your ballast, and it'll darken the ballast for a short period of time. You want to thoroughly soak it. Don't worry about the rail. I'll talk about how to fix that later. Once that's soaked, you're going to take a 50-50 or 25-75 mix of water and Elmer's glue, or you can use Woodland Scenic Cement, which you may be able to skip some steps with, but the economical version is this Elmer's glue, white glue. I got some extra bonding glue mixed with water. Now, when I say 75-25, it would be 75% water, 25% glue, or 50% water, 50% glue. What I've noticed with a lot of misters is if you don't use a 75-25 mix, the misting feature does not work, and it's like a regular squirt bottle, and you're displacing your ballast. So, the ballast is wet with the isopropyl alcohol water mix, and now you're taking your glue mix of glue and water and spraying that up and down your ballast area. And then it's as simple as waiting for it to dry. If you want, you can try to take something, I prefer not your paintbrush, but something like your finger to adjust any last minute ballast before it dries. And if you've thoroughly soaked it with both water, alcohol water, and the glue, you're going to have a nice hard surface that's like a rock when you're done. Now you may be asking yourself, well, what about the rail? The rail's metal and now there's glue all over it. That's where you get a track eraser. There's several different brands. You can look it up on TrainWorld.com, just like with the Woodland Scenic Cement or the Ballast. But look up track eraser, and then you're going to take this. It looks just like a regular eraser from our school days. You're going to run it up and down the rail, and you'll see sometimes just a very thin little ribbon come off the rail. Looks like a little thin clear ribbon, and that is where the glue is dried to the rail, and now you have your rail clear for that area for operations. What you don't want is to leave that glue, because although locomotives these days have a lot of capacitors built in where a track interruption of power it'll roll right through. It can add residue to your wheels, or for the older locomotives, the ones not equipped with capacitors, it can interrupt power just enough to bring your train to a halt and start back up, cause derailments, cause uncouplings, and things like that. You just don't want that mess. So as you lay your ballast down, be sure to use that finished step of a track eraser. And just in case there's questions, this track eraser is a Walther's Bright Boy, and there is the number right there, the Walther's part number. But again, lots of different versions, same effect of getting your rail cleaned up. Well, hopefully that was straightforward and simple enough for you to easily replicate on your layout to make your track look more realistic, with a completed step of ballasting the track and watching out for those switches as well. With that said, if you have any questions, be sure to comment down below in the comments. I'll try to keep an eye out. And this is a community of model railroaders, so we're always here to help each other so other people can opine on their ideas as well. So with that said, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time right here on TrainWorld TV. Take care.